2015.
It was in May of 2015 is when we had actually released that one. But I think we were recording in March, something like that. So yeah.
So it's been on 2.5 years.
Yeah.
A lot has changed.
Exactly, right? So that's the whole point of doing this. This episode of Bourbon Pursuit is made possible through listeners like you, supported through Patreon, and with partnerships brought to you by the following. Danner has been making boots for 85 years for the unforgiving Pacific Northwest. Their Stronghold series is inspired by hikers, but built for the toughest working conditions. Order online or find your local store at danner.com. Hey everyone, it's a good thing we're not recording podcasts this week because I am just a little bit under weather. But just to talk a little bit about today's release, we have a same guest that we had back on episode 13. A lot has changed since then, so it's going to be good to see how things are going at Angel's Envy. In addition, if you don't know much about Kyle, he's got a killer collection of booze and cigars. We hit on a bunch of great topics this time, so if you haven't done so yet, go listen to episode 13 and then come back here. We also recorded Kyle last night at the Kentucky Derby Museum Legends series, and you can expect that to come out sometime in the future. We're working on some things behind the scenes, and we can't wait to share it with you all, including a brand new t-shirt design for our Patreon supporters. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't done so already, and you want to get every new podcast release beamed straight to your inbox, make sure you sign up for our listserv. Go to bourbonpursuit.com, scroll down just a little bit, and sign up to join our listserv, and you're going to get emailed every single time a new podcast is released. At the same time, make sure you're all subscribing on iTunes. You can also like us on Facebook. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. YouTube is actually growing a lot in popularity, so we're glad people love to see the videos that we're pushing out. With that, enjoy this week's episode. Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny and Ryan coming back to you again with another guest that we had, but actually it was back in the teens, and it's at one of the great new, I wouldn't say great new, I mean actually it's great. The brand's been around, but it's a newer distillery that has been etched its way into Whiskey Row. And maybe Whiskey Row's further that way, but it's in downtown Louisville, close enough. But I'm excited to actually talk to our guest today because it's good to get an update of how things have changed over the past 2 years since the last time we'd actually talked to him. Yeah, we've been here in Louisville. We've been seeing this distillery being built for quite some time, and this is my first time walking in, and I was like blown away. You're like, this is like the nicest, cleanest distillery, like coolest distillery I've ever been in. Like, holy shit! I mean, I think they mopped the floors and everything. Oh, I know there wasn't a speck of dust or dirt. Like normally, you're like, jumping over like grease guns and like gas cans, not gas cans, but you know what I mean, just equipment everywhere. The other distilleries, or they got barn cats laying around everywhere, or something like that. So yeah, it's tough to find that. But this distillery was also built with the purpose that they knew it was going to be a huge visitor attraction. So that's one of the unique concepts to it that I really like, is that everything was built in the way that they know they want to do tours through it. They want to be able to show people the experience. They want to be able to, give them the opportunity to be able to walk around, look at the fermenters, touch them, smell them, dip their hands in them. And I don't really know what they do here, right? But one day we'll find out. One day we'll do a tour here. Yeah. So I want to go ahead and introduce our guest today. So we have Kyle Henderson. Kyle was back on episode 13. For anybody that doesn't know, Kyle is the production manager at Angel's Envy Distillery. So Kyle, welcome back.
Welcome back. Thanks for having me. Good to be back. You said this is episode 1.
We're up there.
100,000. It's been a while, so I'm glad to be back.
Good. So I kind of want to give people a little bit of a taste about again, I don't want to say like go listen to it again, but people that are just now joining the podcast, they want to know more about you. They want to know more about Angel's Envy. So kind of talk about you, how you came up in the ranks, what you do here, all that kind of good stuff.
I was fortunate enough to be more or less born into this one. Very, very lucky there. A lot of people spend a lot of time looking around for jobs, applying here and there. I actually didn't want to do this because my family did this. My grandfather did this. I thought I was cool, but I wanted to go into medicine. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, work on sports medicine type things, those nasty breaks you see.
Not hip replacements.
No hip replacements. No, the tibia snaps on the basketball court. I was like, it sounds horrible, but that excites me.
So like the Teddy Bridgewater knee blow up. That was.
I was about to say those are the videos you see. And
I cringe.
Oh yeah, and when your leg is now at a 90-degree angle. God, that's kind of stuff. I'm like
Kevin Ware stuff.
Interesting. Kevin Ware.
Yeah,
that was a pretty bad one though.
Yeah.
That was a pretty bad one.
If anybody they're just listening to this, not watching it, you guys should have just seen it was like a half crack of a smile. He was about to say, he was like, I really love this stuff, but he tried to hold himself back. So I'll let you keep. Of course.
So my dad approached me. I guess it would have been the junior year of while I was down at FSU. So I went to Florida State. And he approached me to come up for a summer and kind of give him a hand. They just needed more or less some bodies to get involved. And he said, come up. We're gonna fill some barrels. I had heard him talking about this idea for a while, but I didn't. Wasn't sure if that was going to be my bag. Whether it was going to be what I wanted to do. So I came up and we talked about it. Did some experiments in the garage. Everybody talks about bathtub gin and everybody's experiments in the bathtub. I mean, this brand was created out of an idea and out of some experiments that were literally done in my dad's garage, almost 10 years ago.
I thought you were about to say literally out of a bathtub.
No, not out of the bathtub. No, it was in the garage. We tried to keep all of the alcohol fumes outside. So I came up, gave some assistance on that, went back to school, and about October, November of that semester, I guess it would have been my senior year, I went, what am I doing? Packed up all my shit and left. Moved back to Louisville. And so here I am now, kind of go through all the motions there. Started doing more things in the garage. We started getting a little office out in Crestwood, which is where my parents had lived at the time. So about 10 miles outside of town, northeast side of town. We didn't have a distillery. We didn't even really have an idea of building a distillery. It was still in the process of maybe we can build a brand, maybe. My grandfather at this point had gotten involved. My dad had convinced him to come out of retirement. And I think one of the things that really helped was the idea of building this legacy for the family. It wasn't just my grandfather doing something again. It was he gets to work with the son, and then over time work with myself, as his grandson to kind of do something neat, unique. Almost his culmination of his entire career could become this, and we think it has, done pretty decently at that. It's done okay.
Just a smidge. Yeah. So at that point, were you all in? I mean, did you when you said you packed up your shit and came back here, or is it still kind of like on the fence, and you're like, I could guess I could do an internship or do it for a year or two?
I was still kind of thinking, I enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun, but it wasn't a full-time job. I'd work a week, and then I was managing a Mexican restaurant, actually.
We don't need you this
week. And bartending. And I mean, we didn't, especially when we first filled our very first port barrels, I guess that would have been August of 2010. We filled, 70 port barrels. And then we went home and didn't do anything for 3 months. So it was, for me, it was more of this is fun. Now let me go back to my job.
Yeah.
And it was like that for several years. Even, as the brand started, maybe we spent some more time, we'd dump some barrels, we'd fill the port barrels and we'd wait. And then we dump the port barrels, or I guess when the brand started, we thought we would dump the port barrels in October of 2010. Kind of the story behind the cork. We have expression 1010 branded onto the cork because we were so confident that a 3-month finish would be perfect. We were going to bottle it in October. It'd be a nice October of 2010, 1010, really cool brand story. And we went to go start pulling barrels in October. And my grandfather more or less said, nope, not ready. You guys are going to have to wait. And everyone went, well, we ordered 100,000 corks. They were expensive. Can we bottle it at the end of the month? So we looked again, October 20th, something like that. By the time we could actually get it in the bottle, nope, it's not ready. Turns out March of 2011, it was finally ready. So almost 7 months later, we actually bottled it. And, like I said, we had already bought those corks. And it's kind of become a
collector's item.
Collector's item. But it also, the story of the brand, everybody and their mother thought it'd be ready in October. and it wasn't. And that's kind of a tagline for the brand. It's not complete until it's finished, I think.
That's what your dad said. Yeah.
So we've taken that to heart, and if it wasn't ready, it wasn't ready. Marketing and finance and all the people scrambling around for money or whatever, be damned. When we're ready to put it out, we're ready to put it out.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, and that's kind of enveloped the entire brand capacity there.
So what convinced you, or what was that turning point where you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. This is where I want to take my career from now on, and not do medicine or Mexican restaurants.
I mean, this week, because we could talk about how we can make a sick quesadilla if you really want to just go ahead and turn it, if you know really how to do that too.
Huevos rancheros or huevos con chorizo. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big huevos rancheros guy. I like.
Yeah.
You're talking about speed now.
Working in the back of the house with those guys who don't cook the Tex-Mex you're eating and eating some real food.
They like micheladas too.
Yes. Honestly, not so much like a moment in time, but a collection of events that happened made me realize, I had more fun and enjoyed this more than anything else I was doing. We were at a co-packer, so we didn't have our own facility at the time, so we more or less gave the rights to bottle our product to another supplier. And my job was to actually develop into this over the course of doing the first bottling until we were bottling more or less every month that the supplier was eventually to manage the supplier, help them develop and maintain our quality specifications, filtration, the barrel blending, selecting barrels to be blended and dumped into port barrels to be dumped, all of the specifications for proofing, and then help them on the bottling line, give them assistance there. They're their own company, of course, but I was fortunate enough that we were early enough in their life cycle that they would allow me on site every single day. And being able to experience working with the people that got their hands dirty, literally reaching your, elbow deep into a tank because, oh shit, I just dropped that screw into there.
It's fine. It's alcohol. It'll burn.
It was a stainless screw. I promise. My quality guys probably listen to this going, "Oh God, no, Mike, that was years and years ago, long before you came." But having the opportunity to, kind of see what people think of like the backwoods. It was down in Bardstown, Kentucky. The people are down to earth. They taught me a lot about hospitality and kind of what the industry was about. That was a good start. And then some of the fun we had. I was already down there. We were bottling our product, and they were doing other products as well, getting other things ready to process. They had more than one bottling line. So this is, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud. They were unloading a tanker of tequila for another client. Mm-hmm. And this was, kind of a foray into the spirits industry for me. I had worked at the Mexican restaurant. I knew what tequila was, but this was a really nice reposado tequila they were going to bottle for somebody. So they were unloading a tanker into some ISO totes, basically a big metal tank that could be moved with the forklift. And they'd hook it up to the tote, turn the pump on, pump it over, fill it up, shut the pump off, disconnect, go to the next tote. So I was one of the guys helping them disconnect, just giving them a hand. I was there. I wasn't being paid. I wasn't involved in the brand or anything. Well, the genius that I was, I decided, there was tequila in this hose. Let me smell this, the hose that's connected to the tanker. And I'm smelling it, and the driver's job is to run the pump. And so he hadn't turned the pump all the way off, so it's starting to slowly feed out. And he goes to flip the pump to put it in reverse, because you can actually go forward or reverse on this truck pump. Well, instead of going reverse, he went forward out of a 6-inch line that can probably move, 100 gallons a minute into my face as I'm sniffing.
It's like a fire hose.
As I'm sniffing, basically a giant fire hose. As I'm sniffing this, this tequila smells great. Just 100 gallons or so a minute of tequila into my lungs, into my nose, into my eyes. And I remember hopping up and down, unable to breathe. The processing manager who was there, rolling on the ground, laughing his ass off.
I'm laughing my ass off.
I thought I was going to die. I had tequila in my lungs. My eyes the next day had crusted shut from all of the sugar and all of the stuff from the evaporated alcohol. Little anecdotes like that. Looking back, man, that was the stupidest thing I've ever done, but just fun little things that,
it's part of the story.
Yeah, it's just part of the whole, the whole evolution of one of the reasons why I enjoy my job so much. And that kind of morphed into, all right, I was managing the co-packer. at some point, we more or less outgrew them. They had other clients they had to supply and support as well, and our demands and their time became so much that it made more sense for us to do it ourselves. So that's really when it set in. It was more or less a full-time job for me at that point. I was doing bottling management with the co-packer 75% of my time. 25% of my time I travel. I go visit distributors, go do market visits, dinners, trade shows, whiskey fest type things, do things like this, interviews. And we decided to open our own bottling facility. So I guess that would have been 2014. Started maybe the end of 2013, early 2014. We moved through the process. We were looking for buildings. We knew we wanted to be downtown. We just didn't have a property yet. And so we looked at leasing some space, and eventually we found a space that used to be an old paint factory downtown. So they had dealt with solvents and a lot of high proof, or not high proof, but very flammable chemicals.
So why not throw bourbon in there, right?
Not a terribly different process as far as a safety standpoint as alcohol production. So for anybody who understands electrical safety, class 1, division 1, or explosion proof electronics, that building was already fitted for that. So we were able to move in and for relatively cheap costs, bring it up to current code, do some cleanup. It was still dirty and grungy. It was an older building. But, we were able to get product in there and control what we were able to do. Basically do what we were already doing with our own people instead of hiring a contractor to do it. So when I was given that job as the blending and bottling manager, that's when it kind of came a realization of, well, it's been, I guess, 3 years at that point. Oh, this brand's successful, and we're hiring our own people, and we're, getting space, are getting offices. And right around that time, the property that we're in now, the distillery here in downtown, we started a negotiation with the state to purchase it from them. Going through that whole design process of this distillery. Oh, well, this is serious. This isn't just another crazy idea my dad and my grandfather had.
Yeah.
But it seemed to work out.
Talk about your dad seems like an interesting character, like with crazy ideas. Like, was he always like that growing up? And were you like, when he brought this up, we're gonna make our own whiskey, and you're like, this is Dad, just one of your other crazy ideas.
He is the definition of an entrepreneur. He was one of those guys that was way into computers before computers were mainstream. And still to this day, he can take down and rebuild a computer and, build it from scraps and parts. And, he always kind of floated around and did different things. And one of the reasons he got into this was not only was his dad doing this, but, he was consulting for some people. He got involved with the ADI, the American Distilling Institute, and kind of really wanting to get a foot in the industry. So he was helping other people do exactly what we did, which is start a brand, do some planning, help them design and open a distillery. And I think finally one day it clicked, and he was working with my grandfather. My grandfather would give some really, masterful experience behind all of these things. And I think one day it went, well, wait a minute, why am I not doing this for ourselves, for the family? And that's kind of where the whole concept of this brand came about.
So I guess another question for you is, when did you really get into bourbon, right? Because let's stay off the Angel's Envy track.
21.
Yeah.
But I mean,
my lawyers aren't here, right?
Yeah, it's fine. But I mean, I know I've seen some things online. You've got a decent collection and stuff like that. So kind of talk about like when you actually got into bourbon, understanding more about the spirits and actually enjoying them more, just outside stuff that your grandfather was making.
So, while my grandfather was in the industry, I was a young, preteen, teenager years. Didn't really have an appreciation for it. And even after starting this, it was kind of cool. Like it was a cool thing, almost more of an ego thing. Oh, yeah. Look at me, I'm important. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until, probably I met Gene. He's the guy that runs Warehouse Liquors in the Loop in Chicago. Really cool liquor store up there. I met him, I guess it would have been late 2012, maybe Whiskey Fest or something like that. And he pulled out some samples of some really cool stuff. And I went, oh man, that's I've never tried that before. I don't think it was even bourbon. I think it was rum or something like that, because we were looking at the rum. Actually, I'm almost positive it was rum, because we were trying different rums to do the rye finish in. And he pulled all these samples, and he had such a great passion for what he was just trying to more or less give us the experience for. You know, he wasn't getting any benefit out of it other than, oh, here's some new rums to taste. Awesome. Seeing that passion, and then he also, man, this was 2012, so he also had about a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle on the shelf for like actual retail price.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, $160. I'll buy that. That looks cool because we had heard about it. People every now and then talked and bought it. Actually, that was one of the first bottles that I purchased that started my collection. So from there, I went into, well, we're going to do competitive tastings to see how Angels Envy compares. So, we did the Woodfords and the Old Foresters, had that pedigree of my grandfather. Great spirits in their own right. We got into the, Knob Creek, all the Beam small batch collection, Four Roses, the Wild Turkey stuff, Heaven Hill, all of the Sazerac, Barton Buffalo Trace, all of that. And the interest started growing from there. And, people don't realize there was, 9 distilleries in Kentucky 20 years ago? Mm-hmm. And how many brands were there?
There's still a ton.
There's still a ton.
Yeah, there's still a ton.
But there was a ton of, relative to how many there are now, not as many, but still a ton for 9 distilleries. And they're all different. And it was really cool to see how even sometimes the same mash bill, the same distillation, maybe just a different way of blending or a different proof made such a different product. Yeah. And that really interested me. So I got from there to, all right, now I got to try some of these old Prohibition whiskeys. So we went to the Master Distillers auction for the Bourbon Festival and started fighting with Drew Colesby from Willett and some of the guys from Jack Rose over old Prohibition bottles. And then it went to estate sales. And then it was, now with the Bourbon boom, all these other brands. So, buy a bottle here, buy a couple bottles there. Oh, we're going to open them and do a competitive tasting with the marketing team. And we drink 3 ounces out of that bottle. So, well, then I've got, 3/4 of a full bottle of something. Okay, cool. Let's keep doing this. To the point where
it's a tax write-off too, right? It's even
better. Yeah. Well, exactly.
Research and development.
R&D. But so the benefit is it allows us to taste all of these cool things and build this cool collection. And when people talk about these things, oh, I wish I had a taste of XYZ. Elmer Teely as an example. After Elmer passed away, that stuff was hot off the shelf. We've got bottles from 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, multiple, I guess, different batches. And it's kind of cool to see the taste progression between stuff from, when he was alive to stuff that's being produced now in his name. It is a little different, and it's kind of neat to see that. But only because I've been involved long enough and we've built this repertoire and built this competitive tasting set that we're able to do that comparison. And I inherited a lot of stuff from my grandfather, so I got to taste a lot of the whiskeys he worked on in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. So a lot of Suntory whiskeys when Brown Forman and Suntory did some partnerships together. Mm-hmm. We have some of the whiskey that was made or barreled at the first the reopening of the George Washington Distillery, which I was actually fortunate enough last year to go and do. I guess it would have been the 10th anniversary of that opening to the public. We were invited back to that to go do the old distillation techniques and mashing in and open boilers and open fire pot stills, which still baffles me how they didn't blow themselves up 200 years ago. Actually, I'm sure they did. You just don't, you just didn't hear about it.
That's why OSHA was formed.
Exactly. So all of that history kind of got me to push too, and now I've got like 1,600 bottles of alcohol in my basement.
Wow,
it's a lot of bottles. That's pretty good though.
That's more than Kenny.
But
I know you got me beat.
But it's not all whiskey.
By at least 3 or 4.
Most of it's whiskey. But then you get into the Scotch. And you're like, okay, let's try a bunch of different scotches. And then, we're doing this rum, so let's try all these rums. So I got like 130 rums in my basement. And then, of course, we were purchased by Bacardi, I guess, 2-3 years ago, 2015.
They even got more rums.
So I got to go buy all their products. We get a product allocation every year. The first couple of years, you get the Bacardi, the Superior, the white. You get the gold, the 8. You pick up some of the tequilas, you get some Grey Goose, and you're like, well, now I still have money every year, and I don't need any more vodka. All right, let's get the Doucet, the cognacs, some of the scotches, the single malts they're involved in. All right, now I bought those. Now let's get the high-end Facundo rums, the Eximo and the Neo, and the really small quantity, super premium things they've come out with. And now I'm out of Bacardi stuff. What other competitors? Let's go to buy Diageo's scotches, and let's go buy Constellation's brands and everything else. And it's really cool because I know they're doing the same thing to us. They're trying our things. We all support each other. And then it grows into all right, let's get some wine, and there's some barrel finished beers. So I've got a bunch of Goose Island stuff in my basement that's been aging over a couple different releases.
We need to become friends.
And then you get into cigars. I mean, I actually met Jonathan Drew, who was the owner of Drew Estate, and they brought him back as the president for Drew Estate Cigars. I guess that would have been 2013 or 2014. I met him at an event over at Riverside Cigar Lounge across the river in Indiana. And we've become pretty good friends since then. So got into cigar selling. Now I have a big closet humidor. I've got like 2,800 cigars.
You got Behikis showing up.
I have a couple Bacchus and Behikis, I like 54s. But,
okay.
56 is a little too big. 52 doesn't last long enough, so.
You sound just like Drew Colesman. He's got...
Really?
Oh, he's got all this stuff in his...
He and I have talked about cigars before, but the two of us are so freaking busy.
Yeah.
We see each other in passing in like the airport. Or at a seminar event, and like, we need to get together. Yeah, and then 6 months later at another event, damn it, we didn't get together. Let's plan on that. I got off on a huge tangent. So sorry,
but I mean, it sounds like you got a kick-ass collection that's growing. Like I said, we should probably befriend each other and try to figure out the time to hang out. But we'll see.
My wife wants to get it out of the basement, so we got to drink it and smoke it to get rid of it.
Bottles you need to open. I love opening bottles.
That's one of the nice things. So there's like about 1,600. Over 1,000 of those are open.
That's awesome.
So I'm not, we may buy something we always buy it legally, always. Mm-hmm. But we're not going to try to sell it and hold it as an investment. No, let's open it. I bought it for a reason. We want to try it. We want to see what it was. Again, more recently, we're back to the Prohibition stuff, the pre-Prohibition stuff, the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, some of those earlier decades. What was different about whiskey? That was kind of the whiskey heyday in the 50s, more or less, 50s and 60s. It's different now. Why? So, my dad and I are working on those projects. So one of the nice things about working at Picardi, they've been around 155 years.
Yeah.
They have a lot of history and data from the rum side, but also from the whiskey side.
Trial and errors and stuff.
And what, they've been doing a lot of research and development for 100+ years. So they have a lot of data on what the industry was like, the spirits industry as a whole, what was different between now and then, regulations, what were different, why did whiskeys taste different from you want to talk about climate change or
types of, people have said that types of wood that's saying that
atomic bombs. You're talking about radiation and trees, things like, I'm like, really? That makes a difference? Yeah, the GC, the chemist who's under the GC mass spec is going, yeah, you can actually see that kind of stuff. It just baffles me that minutia of detail whether it is making a difference, we're not exactly sure, but it's measurable. So you can assume it might be.
Right.
So you're head of processing, right? Or production, I'm sorry. Production. Does all this... Most production guys, they want to keep things the same. Like, let's streamline, let's
like processes. Around with shit.
So you don't mind, just... trying all this different shit, instead of all right, we need to get our process systems, fine tune it quick, bring in all these other ideas.
So as far as Angel's Envy, our port finished bourbon goes, you want it to be consistent. And you want to streamline your processes so you can get, as we expand, get new people trained, the scale up on the volume and be able to handle that. So you do have to, try to make it as consistent as you can. You want this range of bourbon, this mash bill, this yeast, this type of barrel, this warehouse. There's still variances that go into that. Maybe we'll play around with entry proofs like we're doing here. Most of our bourbon that we purchased and then had contract produced for us and that we're producing now goes into the barrel at 125. But now we're starting to play with lower entry proofs between 100 and 103, very low.
Why? Just to try something different? I mean, what's the idea?
The thought behind it, and one thing my grandfather was very adamant on, actually one of the reasons, Woodford goes in the barrel at 110 is that you're adding less, after aging, 4, 5, 6, whatever years, you're adding less water to bring it down to your bottling proof. So you're, in theory, diluting, those concentrated flavors you're getting from the wood and during maturation less. So the theory is, you're able to have the concentration of that flavor more. There's some science to back that up. We're still running a lot of experiments behind that, and we're trying to quantify that, which is hard because it's a perception.
Right.
But you can get there's a perception and there's measurable data too. So you got to bring both of those together to present the argument, because it costs a lot more money.
Yeah, because you got to present that to the
if we're making
the bean counters,
38 barrels a day at 125 proof. Well, when you do 100, 103 proof, you're making 45, 46, 47 barrels. Well, so, okay, it's only 10 barrels. Well, a barrel's almost $200. So there's a couple grand every single day you're spending. And then, so once a week, you have another extra trailer you're sending out. And then a full trailer of barrels in the warehouse every week. And then at one point, now you have to have an extra entire warehouse just to support that the lower proof of entry. And is the payoff really a better product? And our opinion is yes, it will be, and we're trying to demonstrate that, so that because the bean counters are always going to question, well, why can't you go in 130 proof?
Yeah.
Well, because I'm not legally allowed to.
Right.
Okay. So what can we do to make the profitability? Because everybody understands this is a business. While it's a family business, and even Bacardi as a family business, people still need to make money. We're not. While I'm sure everyone would love to just make it for the fun of it, people want to be able to, go home and buy presents for their kids for their birthdays and things, and pay their, mortgage and have a nice car and all of that. And the company still needs to make money.
Yeah.
The Bacardi family would still like to have, some profitability coming from this company that built over the last 150 years.
I think so.
So is the cost of doing a lower proof, does the benefits of that we hope to be a better whiskey outweigh the cost? And that's what we're trying to show everybody from a perception and a physical bean counter perspective as well.
Yeah.
So you're right, our cost went up 2%, but the whiskey's better.
Yeah.
And that's a nice thing about being with Bacardi. Instead of a publicly owned company, it doesn't matter. Whiskey's better, well, unless you can prove it via a sale, we've got shareholders to answer to. Bacardi has their eyes open. All right, whiskey's better. Oh, this does taste better.
Yeah.
Did it cost us
more
1% more? That's okay. We made a better product, and the company is better off for it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of really refreshing. As we went through this whole process of them acquiring us, that was a fear of, well, they're gonna, everything's gonna be about pinching a penny. And while sometimes it is, yeah. I mean, again, they're a business, but they're willing to spend money to do things the right way. And we're hoping this is one of those things we can show them is the right thing. So that was a long-winded thought.
No, it's fine.
It's
perfect
fine as a host.
And I want to also kind of touch on a little bit, because you had mentioned a lot of trying different spirits, trying different competing spirits, so you can be able to test it against your own. However, you all are a port barrel finished brand, yes. Right? Is the idea of experimenting with a lower barrel proof, distilling your own now, the idea to come out with one day a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey that isn't a port finished?
More than likely. So Angel's Envy, as it stands, our overarching theory and overarching almost policy and what we expect, Angel's Envy is, for now, always going to be a finished whiskey. Whether it's a bourbon or a rye or an American whiskey or whatever it is, it's always going to be double mature, double aged, finished, whatever you want to call it. And that's what that whole brand was built on. Louisville Distilling is the parent company of Angel's Envy. So Bacardi didn't buy Angel's Envy. They bought Louisville Distilling Company. Mm-hmm. Louisville Distilling Company can do a lot of different things. My dad and I have talked about, so we just started distilling in September of 2016. So we're already adding up the days. All right, so into 2020, we can release a bottled and bond whiskey. Well, that probably won't be Angel's Envy, but it could be Louisville Distilling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Louisville Distilling can release a bottled and bond DSP KY 20022 bottled and distilled there. So we think about things like that. So yeah, the finishes are important, but certainly there's a path and there's an expectation, at least from my dad and I, and we hope, Bacardi and the whole marketing team to, all right, yeah, the Angel's Envy is finished, but Louisville Distilling has the opportunity to do some of these unique things and be a straight whiskey company as well. Mm-hmm. So cool. Whether we get there or not, we'll see, but we have time.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll probably have another podcast again by
More
then.
than likely.
Yeah. We're on 3-year schedule.
Yeah. So I guess talk about a little bit, because, your role has shifted a lot from just having to worry about a co-packer with bottling to now also covering distillation, right? So what did it take for you to get up to speed to understand how I can manage that as well underneath my umbrella? This episode of Bourbon Pursuit is made possible through listeners like you, supported through Patreon, and with partnerships brought to you by the following. We're not fortune tellers, but when you lace up your new Stronghold work boots, it's easy to see the future does look strong. Danner has been making boots for 85 years for the unforgiving Pacific Northwest. This means Danner boots come with deep roots, and the new Stronghold work boot does just that. This is what happens when you take iconic quality and run it into modern technology. You get tomorrow's classic today. Get into the Stronghold for strength that starts right from where you stand. Order online or find your local store at danner.com. That's DANNER.com.
The State of Logic podcast is like no other. We don't have the same focus as so many other podcasts where we're just going to talk about business or politics or whatever. We talk about everything with everyone, intellectuals, comedians, and celebrities alike. Sometimes it's a 20-minute interview. Sometimes it's a 3-hour interview. But at the end of the day, it's a great conversation that we often laugh about and learn something from at the same time. Come check us out at the State of Logic podcast.
You know, your role has shifted a lot from just having to worry about a co-packer with bottling to now also covering distillation, right? So what did it take for you to get up to speed to understand how I can manage that as well underneath my umbrella?
Trial and error. Fortunately and unfortunately, I was able to, I did some internships. I worked at Catoctin Creek, did an internship there. They're in Loudoun County, Virginia. Scott and Becky were very gracious enough to let me come in there and try to destroy some of their equipment because I didn't know what I was doing.
So it's like driving a stick shift.
Don't turn that knob.
Yeah. And they're a very manual process, or at least they were when I was there. It was years ago. So I learned a lot from them. I think Becky's got a chemical engineering degree. She's the master distiller there. Another little family-owned company. Really, really great people. And one nice thing about our industry is, there's secrets, but everybody's pretty open about things and more than willing to share knowledge. So fortunate, I was able to work with them. While I worked at Woodford Reserve for a little bit as well. So I was able to work with Dave Shurek and learn things from him, having the experience of not necessarily distilling with my grandfather, but talking about concepts and theories and research what he did while he was at Brown-Forman and what worked and what didn't. And, here's some dumb idea we kind of put on the boilerplate, but I want to go back to do it again now that we have the capacity. Are things we try here. And then you come here in this new facility with, really me not having any applicable. Yeah, there you go. Applicable. Man, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
Applicable distillation experience other than some, theoretical knowledge and a little bit of hands-on to, all right, here's some new equipment, run it.
Here's the manual.
Yep.
Good luck.
What manual?
Get on YouTube and watch
Here are some piping and instrument drawings and how this flow is supposed to work. And Kevin Curtis, who was our operations manager at the time, he had a lot of experience at Brown-Forman. He knew what he was doing, but he had me, who was new, and then 3 new distillery operators who had rolled some barrels and done some bottling, and that was it. So we muddled around and we screwed some stuff up, and man, I'm gonna get yelled at for saying this. We had the fire department here more than once. No fires. A lot of boil overs. We actually boiled out of our cooker in our first week of operations because we didn't know what we were doing. We figured out very, very quickly how to stop that from happening, but a trial and error, fortunately and unfortunately. So we know probably more than anybody who
what not to do
has started. Anybody who works at an operating distillery and never started it up. We know the limitations of our equipment more than any of them because we went beyond those limitations and we set the limitations at that point.
So when designing this, did you have input on the design or?
Oh, of course, yeah. So my grandfather.
How did you know how you wanted to design?
Even though he passed away in 2013, so he actually passed away the week after I got married, and we had already kind of started the concepts of this. We weren't 100% set on this site, but we knew what the layout and the flow should be if we were to go into here and kind of the theoretical behind it. And, we knew we wanted, a Vendome column that was designed to do certain things and pull the reflex back in certain places. And we knew we wanted to have a cooker match our fermenter. We didn't want to do 2 or 3 cooks to fill one fermenter. So we wanted to do more of a batch continuous distillation. we knew the concepts behind that. We got involved a very good process engineering firm here in Louisville called Vitalk. They help a lot of distilleries. They do work for makers and OZ Tyler and a lot of other people that they keep under wraps too. Those are the ones they publicly talk about. So they have a lot of really good distilling experience. Several of their staff members were engineers at distilleries for companies, distilling companies, and so we use some of their expertise. All right, here's what we want to do. How do we do it? And they go, oh yeah, well, your dynamic fluid flow is XYZ, and if you have a 90-degree turn, you need to have this size of a pump, and your fermenter size is this, and this is your beer flow, and boom, there's your output on your still. Wonderful, build that for us. So you take that and you bring it to the piping guys, the guys who install the piping, and here's what we want to do. Let's lay it out, put it in, and over the course of 3 years, you build a distillery, and then you find out, well, that wasn't the way we wanted to do it, so you cut some stuff out and you put it back in, because nobody's perfect.
Yeah. It all makes sense on paper.
Well, you know what?
And once you fire it up,
crazy engineers, I know you're listening. The math says it should work, but in real life, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a 90-degree angle, it works exactly like this. Well, I'm sorry, with my little protractor, it's a 91-degree angle. Well, I didn't run that equation, so I can't do that. It's trial and error. You have to get it going and go, man, that pump was a little undersized, and that's why you build an extra 10% capacity in things, because it may be a little undersized without it. How do we get on this?
No, we're talking about the design, but I think you covered it all.
Yeah, but I kind of want to dive into it a little bit, because you're hiring the design company and you're building this up. However, getting the right people, I think, is the hard part of any job. So what was the onboarding process of trying to find the right people to help staff this facility and everything like that? Because I know that it's not an easy job market to find the right people, have the right fit, to make sure that,
because you're not the only distillery popping up right now. It's
you have competition.
So all the talents, everywhere.
Well, when we started, we were, one of the early kind of ins in Louisville. Or I guess it would have been in 2014. We put our help wanted ad, for lack of a better term, for our two lead people. So we had a lead processing operator, and we wanted a lead bottling operator, because we were going to dump processed whiskey and bottle whiskey. So the guys that applied, Blake and Chad, Blake actually applied for bottling, and Chad applied for processing, along with a lot of other people, actually like 100-something people. And we got down to these last two guys, and Kevin and I were responsible for hiring and then managing them. And we went, well, Chad would be great for the bottling, even though he applied for processing. And Blake, man, he'd be really great for processing, even though he applied for bottling. So we offered them the opposite job that they applied for. And those were our first two operations hires. Then we hired a few people just to help us roll barrels. So we bought our own warehouse right about the same time, one of the old Yellowstone warehouse down on 7th Street. Refurbished it and got our DSP, and we're like, well, our barrels are stored all over the state. Let's try to consolidate some. So we started moving in 3 trailers of barrels a day. So 270 barrels a day. The 3 of us and Kevin rolling barrels, and oh my goodness, you've never had a workout until you've had to roll.
No gym membership.
And this would have been like November and December. Yeah, 270 barrels off a truck, pull them over, roll them in, roll them on a rick, learn how to clock. We learned how to clock barrels and get in position to have a bung up.
You better say what a clock is.
What a clock. So when you're rolling barrels into a rick, in our case, our rick holds 29 barrels. And instead of putting half the barrels in on one side and the other half on the other side, you want to position the barrel, pretend the barrel head, the side of the barrel, is a clock. So 12 o'clock being where the bung is, 6 o'clock being the opposite side of the bung. You want to position that bung so it's in a clock position, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, so on and so forth, to when you roll it down the rick, you don't have to touch it again until it stops and the bung's facing up at 12 o'clock. So in our warehouse, you really have to do 4.5 hours, so about I guess what does that come to? About a third of a turn, right? Yeah, about a little over a third of a turn each barrel. So we time. So the first barrel maybe at 12 o'clock, then the second barrel is at 4 o'clock, and then the next barrel is at 8 o'clock, and then to make up for the two half an hours you missed, the next one needs to be at 1 o'clock. That makes sense.
Now it makes sense.
Yeah, wonderful sense. So it's called clocking a barrel. Anybody who's rolled barrels is probably familiar with that term.
It's new for me.
Yeah. I have not rolled barrels.
So go down to like the Bourbon Festival, and they have the barrel rolling competition, and they're judged on if they can clock those barrels and get those bungs straight up. 50 feet down the rick or whatever it is.
Right.
So doing that 270 times a day, man, yeah, you don't need gym membership. You're tired. Kevin gave up about 2 weeks in. His knees were giving out. He was over 50, so he was like, nope, I'm done. You young guys take care of it.
Yeah.
So we hired, we hired two of my brothers, Connor and Andrew. We brought in some temporary workers, some of whom we eventually hired, because we just figured, we don't have our bottling facility ready yet. We only need to move in 15,000 barrels. So let's get do a few trailers a day and get it done. So we started with temp workers through a temp agency because we didn't know how many people we need, and slowly we brought people on. We put an ad out. We need some bottling people, and then from there it was a lot of word of mouth. All right, we need to hire somebody. My nephew's brother's cousin's sister's mother wants a job. Come on in. We do an interview. You're not a felon. You have no DUIs.
Fog a mirror.
Can you stand for 8 hours? You're not going to steal from me? All right, go. And sometimes they did steal from you, and you had to deal with that. It's unfortunate. That's just part of people. People management. That's actually the hardest part of this industry is people.
Yep.
If you could build a computer to do this, most people would just do it with a computer.
Yeah,
but you can't.
You can't.
You can't.
It's so labor intensive.
Some people do it.
Right.
The whiskey's a little, not the same. It's the people aspect that's the hardest and the best part of this.
Yeah.
When we started, we were able to get people, and we just had a bottling and processing. Open the distillery. Well, what do? We poach from ourselves. So we let all of our employees, I think we had like 15 or 16 at the time, apply. Hey, we're going to have 3 distillery operator positions open up in September 2016. And really, we ended up hiring them earlier than that so they could see some of the startup, learn some of the things before that. Sweep and clean, a lot of cleaning, especially during a construction project.
Yep.
So we opened that up, and we had really 3 of our top employees applied and ended up getting the job. So we took 3 of our best employees from our other operations and moved into the distillery, which didn't cripple us in processing and blending, but forced us to go find more people. So we did that. And then in the distillery, we had 3 guys that had processing, warehousing, bottling knowledge, but no distillation at all. So, as I referred to later, a lot of trial and error with them. And then eventually we moved processing and bottling here, moved to the bigger tanks from the small tote tanks, the ISO tanks. Those are 500 gallons to the 5,000 gallon tanks we have, and a 8-barrel dump trough from a 3-barrel dump trough. And then you're filling barrels and putting them in the warehouse and taking them out of the warehouse and all the port barrel handling and everything. So our processing team went from 2 people to 3 people, and the warehouse team went from 4 people to 2 people because we weren't moving a bunch of barrels, aged barrels in the warehouse. You're just moving new fill barrels. So, you move people around, shelf people around, give them more experiences. And then, all right, now our bottling capacity's picked up. Our brand was selling 40,000 cases. Now we're selling 60,000. Now we're selling 80,000, 100,000 cases, whatever it is. We still didn't want to have to work a bunch of overtime or 5 or 6 or 7 days a week. So you hire some more people, you run your line a little faster. Now you've got 12 people on the bottling line. And then your bottling manager gets an amazing offer at a competitor, and he calls you up and says, I got to take this. And you're like, well, crap.
Now we got to start all over.
So now we start all over. And that's kind of what we're going through, now and over the last several months. Like you said,
sounds like controlled chaos.
Rabbit Hole is getting ready to open. Old Forester's doing their thing. Peerless, Copper and Kings, Bullett's investing, Diageo's investing tons and tons of money in the area.
Yeah.
And then you've got the big guys too.
Heaven Hill's expanding
Heaven
there.
Hill's expanding. They're the largest single distillery in the state now. Mm-hmm. It's just while their distillery is set up to run with less people than ours because they have a lot more automation, they still need people there. And it's really nice that our guys get great experience and then go, now I'm going to want to go work for that big company over there.
Thanks
and
for
sometimes
thanks for training us.
Man, we work, we're not just Louisville Distilling, we're Bacardi too. And here's all these wonderful things. Well, what's going to soon happen is, oh yeah, we do work for Bacardi. I've got all this experience. I want to go work in Puerto Rico now at the rum distillery.
I'd do that.
Man, how do you say no to that? Like, I don't have a whole lot to offer you other than we don't have hurricanes and we have snow. So even
4
sister
seasons.
companies, we haven't had it happen yet. We actually, I don't want to say poached. We received the benefits of several other Bacardi plants. So our quality guy, Mike, came from Jacksonville, where Bacardi does their bottling for North America. So he was a quality supervisor down there. He had an opportunity to grow, came here. Our operations director also came from Jacksonville, and he's worked at several Bacardi sites. So we have a lot of great benefits from them. But what's going to happen is, as our team grows and becomes experienced, their skills are going to be needed elsewhere as well. So people are the worst and the best part of the industry.
Absolutely.
That,
so another question was just about the distillation today. So how many barrels are you actually pumping out of here a day then?
So when we started, we were lucky to get like 32. Our yields were terrible. We didn't have contamination. We were making good whiskey. It just wasn't as efficient as we'd like. We've slowly increased that to an average of 36, and that would have been early 2017, maybe February, March 2017. And we've improved from there. So we hired a new operations manager. Kevin left us to go work with another company. There you go. People leave and go to work for the next big, awesome company. We had a lot of support from him, but, he moved to a new one, so we brought somebody else in. So we hired Connor, who's our new operations manager. He was at Woodford and Brown-Forman for a very long time, many, many years. We brought him in, and we're working with him to better refine our efficiency, improve our yields. You guys mentioned early on, we're a very, very clean distillery. We've been open for, a year and a half plus. We still get reviews on TripAdvisor and Yelp. That's the cleanest distillery that I've been in. And we take pride in that. You guys kind of joked about mopping the floors. We mop the floors every day.
Yeah, you can
every
tell.
single day. And people feel, man, this is tedious. It's just busy work, until they see the feedback from people who have nothing to do with us. Holy crap, this place is clean.
Well, yeah, it makes it more like my wife probably, if we went to the Buffalo Trace Hard Hat tour, she would not climb those stairs, and she'd be like, "This place is a dump." And then you come up here, and it's like,
and they're not. That distillery is just how many 100 plus years old,
They're just
and
old.
It's not that it's dirty. It's just old,
Right.
and those things that build up.
But
over
it's
time.
not their perception,
Yeah, so we're trying to delay some of that buildup. But even within the Bacardi organization, so one of the guys who helped us manage this project, he does project management for Bacardi. $100 million plus projects, and he came back a year after he left. He was here for the duration of the project. And when we were completed, he left and went back to his job in Puerto Rico, and came back for our, 1 year anniversary, something like that. And he went, holy crap, this place is still clean. It's an expectation of, you're a plant, you're going to get dirty, but we take a lot of pride in keeping it perfect. And part of that is building efficiency. So cleanliness keeps bacteria and dirt and dust and other things from getting into your fermentations, which lowers your yield. Being able to properly clean and having good temperature control and good yeast management. I got back to cleaning, making sure your tanks are clean before you dump the next tank or go into the next one. That has allowed us to get to the yield we're at now. We're, on a 13,500 gallon fermenter, give or take. We're producing 2,600 proof gallons. So more or less about 37, 38, 39 barrels a day. And that's one fermenter.
Right.
So
nice. I would imagine to say that you're probably dumping more barrels than that per day as well. So is this...
a lot. We're filling a lot more. So we're dumping for this year's volume. We're filling new barrels for 5 or 6 years down the road's volume. And, we hope to grow 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever percentage a year. So if we want to grow, say, 15% next year, and then the year after is another 15, well, that's 15% of 115% of this year. So it's a compounding growth as well.
Yeah.
So we may be filling, 40 barrels a day now. We're only dumping, say, 20 or 30.
Okay.
Because our volume needs now don't
necessarily
match
meet
what
what's
we're
going
going to do
future.
in 4 or 5 years, which we're filling for now.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you have to take into account evaporation. So we have a full barrel now, and 5 years and dump it, it's 70% of what it was too. So
yeah, I mean, I kind of looked at it, the thought process of is this the goal that you're now going to get yourself off of the no more sourcing, right? Is that the ultimate goal?
That's the ultimate goal, absolutely. But you don't want to go cold turkey either, because while the guys we've been contracting with, we've been managing the grains, making sure it's the right grain, the right yeast, all of our mash bills, even specifying temperature profiles for fermentation and distillation proofs and what they pull off and don't pull off and heads and tails cuts and all of that. It's different equipment. The whiskey's going to be a little bit different. We do send them our barrels, so we're able to use our Kelvin barrels. We use Kelvin for 99% of our maturation. Great people to work with. barrel gives you a lot of that flavor, but the distillate going in it, if it's tweaked a little bit,
It could
be a little different down the road. So we're still having some not as much as we used to, when we weren't distilling, but the goal is over the course of several years, blending in the contract production with our current production. So if there is a profile change, it's very long and slow and a gentle rolling hill rather than
more
we jumped
subtle,
off a cliff or something like that.
Yeah,
So-
you could see a gradual progression of the span of a few years.
and
or something
and
like
that's
that.
Fortunately we've thought about that way ahead of time, back when the brand was born. That's part of the expression novelty is each batch is slightly different. It's nuanced. Things change from batch to batch to batch, and that's okay. It's part of our brand. We're not every bottle of whiskey we're not a Budweiser where every bottle of Bud is brewed exactly the same no matter where it was done and it tastes exactly the same. We're going to be different from time to time. So it's part of our brand story too.
It's part of whiskey in general.
Yeah,
right?
Well, exactly,
You
yeah,
can't
yeah.
replicate all this.
No.
So Kyle, we're
Yeah.
kind of coming to the top of the hour here, but I just want to say thank you again for coming on the show. Diving into this. I even had more questions written down.
Oh yeah,
that
but we want to be.
Well, I just kept talking.
We'll do a
and kept
part two.
talking.
No, it's great. It's,
No, it
Ryan
was
said,
interesting.
It's the greatest excuse to be a host because we ask you the question. You just
just go,
It's,
and
it's great.
Well, good.
Well, and and the way
makes
you
our job
explain
easy.
things, it kind of makes it all come together. So no, I think you did a great job of explaining all the process and designing, building, because this place is an artwork. It's beautiful and it's cool how to see it all came together.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a 115 plus year old building.
Yeah.
And man,
It wasn't cheap, I know.
the building itself was really cheap.
Oh,
We
yeah.
bought it at a surplus, but the restoration.
That's where
Looking back, man, do we really want to do a restoration project?
Yeah.
Now, yeah, it was awesome. The place is beautiful. We've had people call it the Cathedral of Bourbon, which I think is a little way off the scale. But
We appreciate
walking
the
in
compliment.
with the double tall ceiling and the
It's the
Douglas
angel
fir
thing,
and
you
everything,
know.
it's really a neat place to be.
Yeah, and I took great comfort in because I'm a small business owner too. Talking about getting all these new machines and screwing up. And like when we first started, like we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Yep.
We fucked up everything, and it's like it's nice knowing that you all go through that too.
Oh, absolutely.
When you see
Yeah.
this, you're like, man, they have
Yeah, we
everything
spent
put together.
$27
and-
million in this, and we still screwed stuff up.
Yeah, exactly. So no, it's pretty cool.
Well, good deal. So, Kyle, if anybody wants to contact you or reach you or just find you here at the distillery, how do they do that?
Oh man.
Don't do it.
Just I already work about 70 hours a week, so just come on to the distillery.
in.
I'm usually here. We're running 7 days a week operation in the distillery. We have shutdowns and holidays and things, but it won't be long this summer. We'll be running around the clock, so I will be here. To the chagrin of my wife, a lot more than I should be. But yeah, you can walk in the front door, ask me if I'm available. I'll come down.
There you go.
simple.
Easy enough. So, Kyle, I want to say thank you again for coming on the show.
Yep.
Since he doesn't have any social media, you can follow us on social media. So you can find Bourbon Pursuit on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Make sure you follow or subscribe on iTunes, write iTunes reviews. That's what helps really get this brand out there. And also, if you do like the show, support us on Patreon. It actually helps us grow. So patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit.
Yeah, and then any show suggestions, feedback, comments, we love hearing from you all, giving us new ideas on where to take the show. So we appreciate that, and we'll see you next time.